I must say, Across the Spider-Verse is probably the greatest cinematic experience I've had in the past 10 years. No, I'm not trying to bait you into watching my video. Well, I kinda am, but no, really. This film wholeheartedly left a bigger imprint on my soul, more so than Avengers Endgame or Spider-Man No Way Home. Instead of having multiple cameo appearances for audiences to shout and root for, we only got a well-made, high-quality story. One that didn't need cameo appearances for shock factor. The very first Spider-Verse film set a new standard for unique and experimental animation. It showcased a refreshing comic book style, distinct from the traditional Pixar-style animation we're used to. This fresh approach was both impressive and long overdue, given the underappreciated nature of animation as a medium and, dare I say, neglected medium of film. Neglected by the big elephant in the room, a room of a vacant house that happens to be located somewhere in Southern California. I love animation. I talk about it all the time on my channel, or more specifically, Japanese animation. But I know that it's not everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay. This film, however, is definitely a lot of people's jugs of tea, and it shows. It got me thinking though, if we forget about the animation milestones for just a second and focus on the story, yeah, some could argue it's pretty lazy to rely on yet another multiverse/alternate reality storyline. Every movie since the last Avengers has been doing it. Currently, it's a profitable writing gimmick, but I fear over time, if writers get lazier and lazier with spamming this gimmick, audiences will get bored. I'm sure we're already building up to the multiverse fatigue. I know I am. But you know what people will never get tired of? There will never be a lack of demand in high-quality storytelling, something that's been forgotten about from many studios out there, sadly. It's only ever revealing as Hollywood cycles between the many remakes, rehashed proven-to-profit stories, and whatever this is.
In the swamp, and I was like, whap, chicka, whap, whap, chicka, whap.
Got nothing against the actress. I must say though, she's got to have a very talented manager to book her all these gigs. Good hustling out there, Aquafina. I drink to your success. If we were to look at the MCU Phase 4, there were a lot of multiverse shenanigans. For better or for worse, or for really worse. And I'm afraid Marvel's gonna continue chasing this trend, rather than just, I don't know, focus on making a good film. Maybe they'll continue making mistakes until they lose money, and they technically already did that. I'm curious as to what will happen in the next phase of Marvel movies. Will this change their plans? Will they stop being so formulaic? Only time will tell, I guess. You may think that, based on my pessimistic tone, I hate the MCU. On my channel, I usually put down mainstream media and promote shows and movies that don't have as much exposure and deserve said exposure. That's not really the case here. I'm just being critical of what I dislike about the current day Marvel Cinematic Universe, and hopefully they can improve over time in the next upcoming phases, however long they intend to make comic book movies. As I reflect upon Phase 4 specifically, a lot of people would agree that Spider-Man No Way Home was the peak. We got Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man portrayals to share the current MCU Tom Holland Spidey on the same silver screen. We even got to see Daredevil, which was a bigger surprise for me actually, and we finally got to see MCU Spider-Man relying on himself, getting rid of that Iron Boy Jr. label. As great a job Marvel and Sony did with the character, No Way Home does possess a notable flaw that even the biggest Spider-Man fans can't overlook. I'd say many fans of this movie collectively have been ignoring this one flaw for a long time, putting it aside as we've welcomed back the legendary Spider-Man, but now it's more clear to me than ever with the release of Across the Spider-Verse. Because, you see, that film blatantly improves on the formula No Way Home experimented with, and has far better writing for the central characters, I may add. It puts MCU Peter Parker to shame. But what am I talking about? Where am I going with this? Well, for one thing, you should hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not too busy. But in truth, the thing is, I do believe Across the Spider-Verse is currently the greatest Spider-Man film we have ever seen. And I'm about to explain why. With one simple writing fix, it easily wipes the floor with the largely overrated No Way Home. P.S. Spoilers ahead. Let me just get straight to the point. I have no issue with how No Way Home begins. It's a great hook. Everyone knows his identity, and now things are really bad for not just Peter, but his friends as well. Seeking out Doctor Strange so him and his friends can all go to MIT is a little far-fetched, because we don't know if they got rejected because of their GPAs, extracurriculars, and standardized test scores, all of which in my opinion are completely useless in the grand scheme of the adult world. But nevertheless, Peter messes around accidentally with Doctor Strange's powers, and that results in the other Spider-Man villains from the past films colliding into this universe, aka multiverse shenanigans. Peter goes around taking responsibility for this accident and is able to round up all the villains so they can be sent back to their original universes, without any cosmic issues that would endanger the very fabric of his universe, which Doctor Strange made sure to clearly explain to Peter. It's here, by the way, where I get perplexed by the writing staff in this film. Right here. Alright, so what's the deal? Why am I making some noise about this?
To make some noise.
Peter fighting fate. That's my issue. You see, like I said earlier, Doctor Strange explained why these villains need to go back to where they came from. If they don't, it'll mess things up in their universe, possibly destroying it. Peter doesn't want to send them back after finding out the villains are destined to die. He wants to fight back against their destiny and save them, even if it means the destruction of his own universe. Some could say it's a selfless act of heroism, and we've seen this kind of thing not just with MCU's Spider-Man in his past films, but in general. That's a reoccurring trait of the character Spider-Man, and why millions around the world love him. In this particular instance, however, Peter's selfless act is not only foolish, it's incredibly contrived in nature. And that's how I would describe this entire film. It's contrived. It's no secret that this version of Spider-Man isn't perfect. I mean, no one is, but compared to our previous live-action iterations, this Peter makes a lot more mistakes than the others, and arguably he's got more support backing him up than any of the other previous working-class heroes. What with the billionaire financing his suits, leaving him a pair of satellite-controlling super glasses that could very easily spark the next World War, or heck, the destruction of the entire planet, which is what was about to happen in Far From Home. The entire story arc we've gotten from this iteration of Peter Parker, from both his solo MCU films and the Avengers films, are a marathon of mistakes and appalling naivete that did make me wonder initially if he was truly capable of taking up the web crawler's mantle. We've seen though, and I've seen very clearly that, yes, this Peter Parker is indeed a character who embodies the very principle that drives what it means to be Spider-Man. So good job, Marvel and Sony. You guys know what's up. This is why I'm so disappointed in No Way Home. If the past films were a marathon, then this film would be a 100-meter dash of mistakes. And unlike the past films, Peter's failures are not endearing or what I would even consider good writing. It's like I said, contrived. I find it contrived that Peter is so defiant and that he wants to prove Doctor Strange is wrong about letting the past Spider-Villains die. Even if it's their destiny and messing with that destiny could prove to be catastrophic, it doesn't matter to Peter. In Peter's eyes, he's right. He's being the hero. And Doctor Strange is not. He's the true villain. He's even got that evil goatee. What really grinds my gears is that defying the Time Wizard who single-handedly helped future events unfold for saving the entire universe these films all exist on is a big red flag. It was thanks to Doctor Strange that he concocted a way to beat Thanos. He found that one future out of all the 14 billion possible futures, and now Peter wants to fight somebody that he personally knew helped save the universe over 3 random criminals? All because of his morals? But I do believe Peter chose the wrong time to stand on a soapbox and have his little moment. Now let's compare Peter's defiance to Miles Morales' defiance in Across the Spider-Verse. You see, he also has an issue with an authoritative figure explaining to him how the rules of the multiverse work, and how he can't mess with anything. That person being Spider-Man 2099, or Miguel Ojeda. This scene works so much better than in No Way Home because of how it's framed. Miles is being told that he can't save his father because, according to the algorithm Miguel has, his father is set to die in what's known as a canon event, and if that canon event is interrupted, then the universe of that canon event would be destroyed. So Miles is not allowed to save him as per Miguel's orders. As Miguel is explaining all this, more and more spider people start to corner and gang up on Miles, which gives off such a strongly negative vibe. They clearly resent Miles for who he is, being an anomaly amongst the spider people, and they want to contain him. They treat him like this specimen, like he doesn't belong and he shouldn't touch anything or do anything. I mean, yeah, of course Miles is gonna fight back. Come on, look at this. Miles says it himself. It's like they're giving him an intervention. They judged him from the start. They knew he was gonna be unhappy. Is Miles wrong in defying Miguel and going against the facts? If all spider people are meant to lose their loved ones as a sort of ritual, as disturbing as the movie made it out to be, if he doesn't want to be numb to the pain of losing yet another loved one in his life, part of me wants to vouch for the kid. He shouldn't have to lose another person, and he himself hating the idea that to become Spider-Man means you've got to be a lightning rod for suffering is so powerful and original. Just the act of defying the facts alone is still incredibly stupid, I can't deny that. Miguel is right to conclude that you can't mess with what he perceives are canon events, as he has seen for himself that it destroys universes, and Miles even saw it himself with the Indian Spider-Man by saving that police captain. But what makes Miles' defiance different from MCU's Spider-Man is that A. You can put yourself in his shoes, so in other words, there's more empathy here. B. This movie has demonstrated just how morally ambiguous all of this is, what with Miles being an anomaly which could make him an exception to Miguel's algorithm, giving Miles more support. C. This refusal doesn't feel contrived in any way, it's natural.
It's right. It's right.
Secretly, you can tell that the whole point of Peter fighting Doctor Strange is so that he's out of the story, letting Peter be on his own to fail and experience his loss, meet up with the two other Spider-Men, and work together to send the villains back home. Doctor Strange was needed for the spell, but afterwards, the story just decided to nerf him, even worse than what happened to him in Endgame when he was just fighting the waves the entire fight. Now, what I've come to understand is that Miguel is not as much of an expert on temporality and how the universe in general works as much as Doctor Strange is. Yes, Spider-Man 2099 in this film lost an entire universe when he tried to mess with canon events. But how can we say for sure that he's fully right to police other spider people into accepting the deaths of their loved ones? His anecdotal evidence alone might not even apply to Miles. We know Miles is an anomaly in this film, and he doesn't experience the same life that other spider people have had, possibly given to his differing origins. Yet, Miles is still fighting against the facts. I get that, it's stupid in hindsight and not logical, but from what little he and even Miguel truly knows about the multiverse shenanigans, Miguel, from what we saw in the post-credits scene of the first Spider-Verse film, was also new to multiverse traveling. So what, it's been like a year since he started traveling to other dimensions? Just how much does Spider-Man 2099 know as compared to Doctor Strange? Doctor Strange isn't perfect either, but we've definitely seen him study more about his magic and how he became the Doctor Strange in the first place. Yes, he's prone to mistakes, that's acceptable, and we see that later in his second film, Multiverse Madness or whatever that mess of a film was called. Yay, more cameos. Good job, Marvel. I see where the budget went. This battle between letting people die for the sake of following an algorithm that Miguel wants to push for is ironic, considering that same algorithm doesn't take into account the very morals that make up what it means to be Spider-Man in the first place. Or rather, it's an arguably misconstrued notion of this right here.
What's important is not standing by and allowing someone to suffer or die because you do nothing.
And that is what Miles is truly fighting for. It doesn't make Miles or Miguel's stance completely one-sided. The writing justifies how the characters will act, and Miles isn't just being stupid, maybe half stupid, but the way this entire intervention was framed and how he was treated, it would make sense for his character to explore the possibility of saving his dad and the universe he's in as an anomaly, since there's a chance being a said anomaly can outright deny the algorithm that Miguel wants every single Spider-Man to fall in line with. Miles is driven to save lives, and Miguel is driven to save lives as well. Both are driven by what they define as the responsibility of upholding the Spider-Man mantle, and each hero has their own way of backing up their stance. One is more logical than the other from the facts we know, but Miles isn't completely invalidated from his will to save his dad. I suppose time will tell if he can save his dad and make sure his universe doesn't implode. It's a powerful way to structure this conflict, and arguably a better approach to the whole fighting against destiny plotline. One could say, well, isn't Miles also being selfish? If this were just any other pedestrian in his universe, and not someone he knew, Miles would not have gone this far. We did see Miles save that police captain in the other universe, so that would disprove that claim in my opinion. I'm sure Miles wouldn't give a second hesitation to defy the spider people for anyone. But just for argument's sake, yeah, we can say that MCU Peter is being selfless by saving individuals who he doesn't know. That's correct. It's selfless, but still dumb. Very dumb. Unlike Miles Morales, Peter Parker does not have any backing, or any strong backing I should say, that could support his decision to fight against Doctor Strange. And no, I can't use that same clip from that Spider-Man video game to justify his stance. It wouldn't hold as much weight as it did with Miles Morales, due to a combination of lacking support, specifically in the writing department, and for the simple reason that MCU Peter is dumb. It's like I said earlier, Peter's support is, maybe we can change their fate. You're wrong, Mr. Strange, you can't send these guys to die. Killing is bad. Which is respectable, but not to a very high degree since it's coming out of the mouth of a teenager with terrible foresight and planning. Doctor Strange inherited the Time Stone. He had the correct foresight for how to defeat Thanos, and he's fully aware of the consequences of messing around with the multiverse. Well, sorta, because the sequel kinda messes with that a bit. But my point still stands. He pleads with Peter as the boy stupidly fights him to reconsider and just send them home. Peter, having no knowledge of the multiverse, but having what I thought was excellent memory of Doctor Strange's prowess in the subject matter, stupidly decides to trap him, steal his magic ring, and goes ahead with saving the past Spider-Man villains. And as far as that goes, I'm not sure what he was thinking. He decides to sloppily take them all in a residential condo, with J. Jonah Jameson's news press easily following them, and what? What was his plan again? The teenager intended on sending the villains back to their universe with upgraded/depowered tech so they wouldn't die in their fights. But he never considers, hey, aren't these guys villains of Spider-Man? Why? Why are they so bad? Nah, I'll just go ahead and save them, who cares? They'll trust me, I'm the good Spider-Man, they won't betray me like any of my villains did in my previous film. I should be good. You know, that would have been an interesting writing choice. They could have made it so that MCU Peter got high on the thought that he could be the better Spider-Man than the past live-action ones who went on to face these villains. Maybe that was implied by the weak script we had? I'm not so sure. In a similar vein to Miles, yes, Peter is a teenager who lacks foresight and makes a terrible decision. Miles' decision was backed up by foresight he may not have done on his own with the whole anomaly business, as well as Miguel not being so wise and knowledgeable as Doctor Strange. But with Peter, our Spider Team chose to fight against a powerful and an almost but not quite omnipotent Avenger. The same person he originally whined and begged to perform the spell in the first place. It was great Peter got these guys locked up towards the middle of the film, I'll give him that. But when he goes out of his way to fight and trap Doctor Strange? What? I can't believe he beat up the helpful and knowledgeable Time Wizard, and then he bragged about it to his friends. The movie tries hard to justify that Doctor Strange was wrong and Peter was right in that moment. But literally, at the end of the day, Peter lost so much from sparing those villains, and Doctor Strange still had to fix what happened, hence why he deus exed the ending by sending all the villains and heroes back. Something that could have happened much earlier in the film, but it couldn't because we just had to fit in the scene with Tobey and Andrew's Spidey, which is great and all, don't get me wrong, I love that in the theater. But if it's all contrived, then what's the point? And was it worth all the sacrifice MCU Spidey had to go through? He wets the bed later because he lost his Aunt May. And in all seriousness, I mean no disrespect to him losing a loved one. But he messed up big time. It's his fault she's gone. And both from an emotional and writing standpoint, the way he messes up in this film makes no sense in relation to how he was portrayed in his previous films. And therefore leads me not to care much about his trauma. I wouldn't say I'm desensitized by it all, but it's hard to feel bad when he let all of this happen. I gotta ask, what kind of story arc is this? If the story is resting on Peter making more mistakes than ever before, he's not progressing as a character. He's actively regressing the character he built up for himself from all the way back in Civil War. People can make mistakes, but why can't they change and improve from them? In the case of Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man losing Gwen, or Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man losing Harry, there's more at play with those losses, and it's not directly Spider-Man's fault. As is the case here too, but MCU Spider-Man's foolishness is so unreasonably matched, it practically created a breadcrumb trail for all these villains to effortlessly take advantage of him. Something you couldn't find with the previous Spider-Man's losses. Whereas with them it was tragic they lost someone, the impact of MCU Spider-Man's loss is lessened to a point where it's really hard to care. For me at least. I mean, in some other cases, yeah, you can have a character becoming worse off than how we were introduced to them, like with Adam Sandler's character in Uncut Gems, but that was for a different thematic purpose, different context, and different story arc which ended up selling audiences the character. So, anyways, in not similar relation to Miles, this Spider-Man has also been through many more incidents involving mega-world conflicts. He's had a villain of his own rogue gallery betray him, much like Green Goblin and the other Spider-Man villains do in this movie. It's easy in hindsight to doubt his character, since we the audiences know about the other MCU films and such. Peter may not be as omniscient, but he's certainly experienced all of it. Why can't Peter be smarter? Why can't he have more hindsight? I just want to say, there are times when people tend to over-explain why they don't like something, when really deep down, the film just didn't resonate with them emotionally. As you might be getting off of my reason to complain about the universally loved Spider-Man No Way Home. In my defense, I can like something and at the same time recognize it's a failure of a movie. I can also not like something and yet still recognize if it's truly cinematic excellence. From a respectable distance, of course. But that isn't to say I'm flawless in any of my justifications. These are purely and subjectively my thoughts. I'm not only not emotionally invested in a character who fails to learn from their past, I'm also very dismissive of someone who demands my pity for their weak writing. I get it, MCU Peter is sad for the mistake he made of doing the right thing. He lost so much for being the hero. But in that moment, the way he chose to be the hero by fighting his mentor and the unquantifiable entity that is fate itself, this can't be the same Peter who fought in the Infinity War, and or the same Peter who learned what happens when you give away Mr. Stark's billion-dollar glasses that control destructive drones to a complete stranger. Yes, he was tricked into doing that, sure, but hasn't he learned from any of those events? Hasn't he matured by now? Miles, on the other hand, I'll be real, I am emotionally invested in his character. The writing managed to make me feel like I could truly relate to this teen. But forget about my emotions. The writing for the overall plot and the surrounding characters is very strong in this film, because we can see a clear point as to why each character is acting a certain way, even for a small but mega important character like Hobie, aka Spider-Punk, a character who has so few lines, but some of the best writing and character dynamics I've ever seen in a comic book movie. I understand Miles' defiance. He's logically wrong. However, the writing built up to why he would naturally go against the Spider Society, and it all checks out with me. When I deem the writing is good, I tend to fully embrace the narrative, but I try to be careful since I know not everything is perfectly flawless. In this instance, I can both subjectively like the film and see it was given enough attention and care with the writing of the story, which is a rarity in this day and age. They took the concept of defiance and added more layers to it, and created a better environment where defying fate would be more applicable and morally ambiguous, while still sustaining that childlike ignorance and naivety that you would come to expect from a teen. A far more believable performance, mixed with brilliant writing. I find it genius.
It's not your fault, Peter. It's not your fault.
Yes it is. Yes, it's your fault. And again, that was kind of the whole point of No Way Home's ending, taking responsibility, so good on him. And good on the writers for getting that right. This is the ultimate, with great power comes great responsibility, for this iteration of Peter Parker. That's something I couldn't say well for the previous MCU Spider-Man films, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Both Spider-Men, MCU Peter and Miles Morales, are great incarnations of the web crawler, and I like to see correlations between the animated and live-action Spider-Man, such as this defiance plotline they both have. I, however, think Spider-Verse's attempt at giving us a well-written protagonist is better than what we got in the MCU, and I can't wait for the third Spider-Verse film. Very excited to see what happens there, and if Miles actually does end up losing someone, it would stink. But knowing how well the writers handled this defiance of fate, I can't wait to see what writing magic they'll incorporate for the third and seemingly final Spider-Verse film. Thanks for watching, guys. If you're still there, just know I hope you're having an excellent day. Well, pretty excellent weather where I'm at, actually, so I'm having a great time. I like going for walks in the evening, just kind of catching up with my health. I hope, when the weather gets colder, I'll find a substitute for this, because, yeah, I can't walk when it's super cold and snowy outside, but I'll figure something out. Well, anyways, catch up with you guys later, and have a great day. Subscribe and like this video if you want to, but you don't have to.